All right, and we are recording. Maybe we can give a couple more minutes for folks to join us. And in the meantime, Zach, do you want me to go ahead and read through my normal script?
That'd be great, thank you.
Sure. Well, welcome everybody to the February 17 Eugene Sustainability Commission meeting. I have just a little script that I read through each meeting just so folks can access the technology a little bit more easily. But yeah, we're excited that you're here and joining us in this particular format. It feels like we're so close to coming back in person yet so far. So thanks for staying with us. For those of you who are joining the meeting via computer, device, or phone, just want to let you know that your microphone, webcam, and phone are automatically muted when you enter the meeting as an attendee. Commissioners, as a panelist, you are able to mute or unmute your video and mic at your discretion, but we do ask that you please mute yourself when you're not speaking to avoid feedback and background noise. If you wish to participate during the public comment portion of the meeting and haven't already done so, please raise your virtual hand now to join the speaker's queue in one of two ways. For those viewing the meeting on a computer, laptop, or other device, you can click on the blue hand icon. If you're listening via phone, you can press *9. *9. I will lower hands as speakers are called upon. When the public comment begins, Chair Zach Mulholland will announce the next two speakers at a time. When it's your turn, Zach will announce your name and I will unmute your microphone. You'll have 2 minutes to speak, after which I will again mute your microphone, just as a heads up. Regarding the chat Q&A functionality of Zoom, I just want to draw everyone's attention, especially our attendees, to the chat box. Please do not use the Q&A box. We don't monitor that box throughout the meeting, nor do we use it to answer questions. If you have thoughts or concerns, we encourage you to go to the link provided to message the Sustainability Commission, or if you have a particular email you would like to use for a commissioner, you can use that as well. For our commissioners, we also ask that you not use the chat box because our attendees and the public, they don't have access to that conversation. Lastly, in accordance with the recent passing of House Bill 4212, this meeting is being recorded. Recordings are going to be posted to the Sustainability Commission website after each meeting for 30 days, after which you may request a recording. Thank you everyone again for your flexibility and for hearing me out, and I look forward to a great meeting ahead.
Thanks, Samantha. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. To start, we do have a new commissioner joining us. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself for a minute?
Yes, hi everybody. I am, as Zach said, brand new. I wanted to thank everybody that I've reached out to and kind of talk a little bit about the commission and what you do and where you're going. And I'm just really happy to be here. It's a group of smart, dynamic people, and I hope I can just make a small contribution to that. I'd actually like to have the opportunity to talk to sort of everybody offline for 15-20 minutes and get to know you that way. So I won't take up much more meeting time than that, but just know that I'm interested in what everybody thinks right now, very much so. And I'm going to do a lot of listening in the beginning and you know, looking forward to, you know, it's very small way changing the world. So anyway, let's get back to the meeting. Thank you.
Great to have you here, Mike. So to jump right into things, first is going to be minutes, and then we will do public comment and jump into our presentation from Ethan.
Sorry,
what?
Zach, we'll need to approve the agenda as well. I wasn't.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Can we approve the agenda first? Is there a motion to, are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, can someone make a motion that we approve the agenda? Karen, and seconded by Mtima. All in favor of approving the agenda, raise your hand, please. Okay, and all opposed? And all abstaining. Mike, was that an abstention or a yes? We can't hear you.
I didn't get the agenda, or I was sort of waiting for some sort of ongoing onboarding package, so I'm not going to vote. I'll abstain.
Okay, so that's an abstention. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Next up is minutes. Any proposed changes to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion and a second?
This is Howard. I'll move approval.
I could second that, Art.
Okay, Howard and Art. Okay, great. Up next, we have public comment.
We need to vote, Zach.
Oh, God. I'm sorry. Just trying to rush things through. All in favor of approving the minutes as well? And any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, and one abstention. Okay, now moving on. Public comment, it looks like we have two folks with their hands raised. So first up is James New, followed by Janine Parisi.
Hello, commissioners, can you hear me? All set, great, thank you. My name is Jim New, I live in Ward 7, and I just wanted to thank the commission for compiling the Eugene Climate Action Fund and listing various funding mechanisms. This is a very specific, detailed list with examples of jurisdictions where these actions are working. This professional document is exactly what the City Council requested of the Sustainability Commission when asking Council to consider actions in implementing funding mechanisms for the Climate Action Plan. I thank you for your efforts and hard work, and I hope the Council heeds your recommendation and establishes the Eugene Climate Action Fund. Thanks again. It's a great job.
Okay, next up is Janine Parisi.
Hey everybody, good to see new faces and some old existing friends that I haven't seen in a while. I'm Janine Parisi. I work for Eugene Water and Electric Board, and I'm assuming you can all hear me. Okay, thank you. Sorry, this virtual world. I wanted to give you a quick update from the last time we met with you with EWEB on the electrification study. That was back in September. Our board did get those final results in November, and we said we'd keep you up to speed. So I wanted to do a real quick rundown of that. Remember that that study is to explore the impacts of widespread electrification of vehicles in buildings to EWEB and better understand how transitioning from fossil fuels to electricity can support our carbon reduction goals. So a quick recap of that study. In essence, the combination of ample clean energy resources and our strong legacy of conservation means that we're in a good position in Eugene to support electrification. The study showed that under our highest forecasted electrification rates, EWEB would probably experience something like a 20% growth in electric load by 2050. But that on average, we have enough surplus energy to meet our customers' electrification needs for at least the next 5 years. So that's good news. Study also showed that EVs, electric vehicles, present a meaningful carbon reduction opportunity for EWEB service territory, and that the conversion of gas and water heating helps, but to a lesser degree. And a lot of this is because it has to do with the market. There's so much room for growth in the EV market, while some 60% of EWEB customers are already electric when it comes to their heating for gas and water. So there's just not as much opportunity in that market. So the main takeaway from that study is that electrification can play an important role in helping meet our goals, but it's just one part of a larger strategy. If we want to achieve economy-wide decarbonization, we've got to be looking at multiple fronts, and that includes decarbonizing our fuels, looking into deeper energy efficiency, looking at carbon mitigation and sequestration strategies, and continuing to green the grid. So what's next in 2021, we'll be working on phase 2 part of this report, and that study will evaluate changes to the carbon intensity of the electric grid and energy resources over time. We know that the grid's going to get greener over the 30 years of that study. We'll be looking at some additional scenarios like rapid population growth in our area, maybe as more and more people are climate refugees, and other climate related uncertainties, including the impact on hydro generation. We'll be looking at the economics and cost to consumers as we look at more electrification and how EWEB programs can help mitigate the peak impacts of electrification, because that's one of the big cost drivers is what happens when there is peak electricity on the grid. I also just wanted to spend a minute or two talking about the 100% clean energy bill that is in front of you tonight, perhaps. I wanted to let you know that EWEB is in support of that bill, but I wanted to offer you a little bit of caution so that you know how we're speaking to our legislatures when it comes to this particular bill. I'd like to start with just celebrating that we're confident that with the backbone of our hydro system in the Northwest, we have a clear pathway to getting most of the way there. So probably 95% renewable energy by 2035, which I think is the goal. That last 5% is going to take us some time and some technology changes to ensure that we don't overbuild renewables for peak energy situations. And that last 5% push could be hugely expensive to ratepayers. It could create some land use issues. That's not the best use of our farm and rural lands. And that won't solve for reliability concerns. So we know that climate change is causing more erratic weather patterns, and we wouldn't want any 100% clean energy legislation. We would want that legislation to have room for a few weeks in the year for that grid reliability. We might need some non-renewable resources, at least in the short term, to avoid rolling blackouts like what we're seeing in Texas. So we have a lot to be proud of in the Northwest. We are a net clean energy exporter. So on average over the year, we're sending clean energy to the rest of the grid, and that's a good thing. We can be proud of that. And that's only going to get better over time. I'd also just remind us that we don't need to get to 100% clean energy in the electric sector to meet our science-based climate standards. So when it comes to legislation like this, the devil's in the details, and we just want to make sure we get to the solutions we want, which is a clean, reliable, and affordable grid, but try to avoid the unintended consequences. And I'm probably out of time, but I just wanted to offer my partnership as your EWEB representative, but also in my role as a LRAPA board member to explore in more depth effective ways that we can work together on air quality issues. I also noticed that in your work plan, so let us know how we can work together on those as well. So thank you.
As a fellow kind of government representative, yeah, we let you run a little bit long. But we have some time for commissioner response, and then let's jump into Ethan's presentation. I'd like to try and get done with that at 6:25 so we can take our break and get right back into things at 6:30. Any commissioners? Laura?
Yeah, I just had a question for Janine about, so you're supporting the 100% clean energy, but you're asking for a little bit of wiggle room in the language to allow for a couple of weeks, but you're not, I'm just making sure I'm understanding you correctly, but you're not asking for like us to promote 95% renewable. It's still 100%, but there is this little wiggle room during a part of the year that it's really hard to meet the total demand. Is that what you were saying?
Samantha, are you able to have her respond?
Okay, I had to unmute again. I mean, I just want to make you aware that we're going to need some off ramps for those couple weeks of the year where we might have extreme weather events, and just wanted to make you aware of where EWEB's position is going to be on that. You know, you could do it as a net clean energy bill. So a net would give you some wiggle room because you could have some combination of offsets if you have to bring some fossil fuels online, and you would offset those through some other strategies. So there's ways that you can do this. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that that goal may be, it is a devil in the details kind of deal. And Ethan probably can, you know, provide additional guidance from you if you're, you know, wanting to have a more nuanced response. Thank you.
Any other commissioner response before we get into the presentation? Seeing none, it looks like you're up, Ethan.
Great. Thanks, Zach. Hello, everyone. Ethan Nelson. I'm the City of Eugene's Intergovernmental Relations Manager. It's good to see some familiar faces from my days of being the Sustainability Manager and helping to support your operations, and then also just some other folks I know from the community. So it's hello. So I was asked, Sam and Chelsea asked me to provide a IGR update, so intergovernmental relations update on legislation, cities tracking, and then also be able to answer any questions or chat with you a little bit about the Northwest Natural Gas negotiations as part of my roles as the negotiator for that for a period of time. And so I kind of want to make sure that I'm using your time appropriately and wisely, and allowing for lots of questions if you have them, and then potentially you can have an efficient meeting if you don't need me, and you could get to your break and maybe on with your night in case I'm droning on ad nauseum. So with that, I did send out an email to Sam, and she then forwarded that on out, and there was two emails. One was the email that I sent to council recently that just had a listing of the bills that we're tracking as our priority ones. It's not all the bills we're tracking across the entire organization, but the ones that are really taking up the focus of my time, and also our contract lobbyists. And then secondarily, I sent there was an email that was included a policy document and also a memo related to some of the topical areas and some of the stuff that we'll be working on. And that came from myself and the current chair for the Igr committee, which is Councillor Clara. And so I guess I'll ask you what you would prefer, is just to say, yes, you reviewed those and you've got questions, or if you'd like me to share screen and walk through potentially the policy document or the email itself with the priority bills that we're tracking right now. So I'll kind of leave that for you to give me some direction as to what's going to be most beneficial for you.
Ethan, can you walk us through the list, and then just also kind of give us a sense of how this document came to be? How are these decided upon, and who makes those decisions of how does this list get developed?
Sure. So I'm gonna okay, I can share screen. Great. So I'm gonna do that and see if I could find my document. Okay, so I'm hoping that everybody can see the 2021 state and federal legislative policy. Getting some head nods there? Yep. Okay, thanks. So this document is basically developed, we've been adding on to it for the course of about 7 years, 6-7 years, and it's grown. Previous to this, it was basically a compendium of policy statements that you could drive a Mack truck through related to the city's position on a wide variety of things. And actually the document became way too unmanageable, way too many things moving. And so we tried to pare it down. And I guess it's maybe like a haircut. Every 5 years, you got to come in and pare out, trim out some things. Maybe not a haircut, maybe it's pruning your apple trees. I hope people have gotten on out and pruned their fruit trees this winter before the spring budding. So in regards to this document, it's almost like kind of a historical document that we just keep adding to, and we'll move a little bit every year. Zach, to your question related to how it gets developed, well, it's out there. We started it off in 2014. And the process for approval has kind of gone through this similar process, which I'll talk through you now. In the summer, in the fall, generally before the legislative session, which is starts off in the winter, we spend time internally talking to our staff, the policy experts, to say, hey, do you have anything that's on the radar that you know that's going to be coming from a policy standpoint? We also work with our colleagues at League of Oregon Cities, and then also through a number of different professional organizations to really try to get a sense of potential items that might be coming down through the legislative session that we want to have a position on. And so, we'll get that information. We'll see where it fits within this existing document, and then we will then move it through an approval process where I spend time on it, getting it ready. Then we'll sit with our executive directors from the different departments to make sure that they've approved it and any tweaks that they want to see. And then it goes to IGR committee, and IGR committee reviews and provides some feedback, and then they approve it. And as under the council's working agreements, if they have a 3-0 vote, then it becomes kind of the official position for the city related to federal and state policy. And so that's how the process for it to get approved. And so, as you can tell up here, it was adopted at our January 27th meeting. And so before I move on, any questions on that?
Who is on the IGR committee?
Currently, that's a great question. Thanks. If you go to our website out of the city manager's office, or if you just go to our city website, you can type in the Intergovernmental Relations, and we've got a web page, landing page with a whole bunch of information, current testimony, this document and everything. And on there is also a tab for the IGR committee. And right now it's the chairperson is Clara Surratt, and then Councilor Greg Evans and Councilor Matt Keating. And the mayor sits on it as ex officio. So working through this, I'm just going to maybe just hit the high points rather than getting on into the details. So, this last summer we updated it in the spring for the special session. And so we put in there some items related to the coronavirus pandemic. We've got a section here on support housing opportunities and financial stability for Eugene residents and addressing the homelessness crisis. So it's got a lot of different pieces in here. Securing local finance options. And so this is a lot of supporting local control and fighting against preemptions that come on up from time to time. The general government one, we added that section this year simply because we had some items that we wanted to put in there related to some public records and just basically public records requests and some of the public records law. We always have a section on economic development, land use, information technology, telecommunications, and municipal right-of-way authority. And so this is a big one that a lot of times comes up at the state and the federal level. So it's nice to be able to have clarity there for us to secure our the public's authority over public right-of-way. Public safety, and so that includes fire and emergency medical services, as well as courts, law enforcement, and prosecution. And that one got some updates this year, but we're also going to probably have some other elements that are coming on up based upon a lot of the police accountability and transparency work that's happened at the state this year. Transportation, it's got a lot of information there. Environmental, natural resources, and then climate recovery. That was a section that Chelsea and I worked on this year and added. And one of the kind of the parallels then was we were able to pull from the CAP 2.0, and there's, as you know, in a lot of those sections, there's what were they? The state and federal actions, and so those we were able to cull from that and add these on into the list. So we've got a bunch of that stuff, and then there's one for public health and wellness that our library and recreation folks really wanted to see put in here a couple years back. And then where we are right now is that the IGR committee also asked for us to put forth a proposed human rights and equity section. And so we've got a draft of that we're going to share with the IGR committee at our next meeting next Wednesday and seek their approval for that. And if they approve it, then we'll add it to this and resend it to council. So it's an updated version. Any questions?
I'll let others go first, and then I might have one or two. Ethan, can you speak to the 4 bills that the commission has been looking at, either the 2 tonight, the producer responsibility for plastic waste and the 100% bill, renewable energy bill, or the 2 we passed a resolution in support of last month, the environmental justice bills that Beyond Toxics and NAACP have been supporting. Are those either of those 2 from last month on the council's radar? Is that part of the equity stuff that's being discussed next week? And then I guess in terms of getting these heard by council, would it be that we should send it to the IGR committee specifically?
Yeah, those are all good questions. I'm going to share my screen again. We'll kind of walk through an email that I gave, that I sent to council earlier, and that you've got a copy of. And so this one went on out, and it's kind of our first one. And let me see if I can make it bigger. Is that better? Folks can see it. So here's these what I was calling the priority 1 bills, and so the ones that were really that all spend a lot of time on. And so there's ones related to local financial stability, housing, land use, and homelessness, and public safety, and then our general government, transportation, and then some of our climate recovery and environmental ones. And so Zach, specifically on the climate justice land use bill, HB 2488, we're tracking that one, and we're supportive of the concept. Yet the way that the bill is written would be, we wouldn't be able to implement it. The timelines on it are not realistic, and the taking on of the goal 1 issues are just really large, and they're fairly complicated. And the way that the bill was written was in such a manner that it would be unimplementable at both the state and the local level. And so what we're supporting on that is going to be, at least this is our position for council, or excuse me, IGR to discuss. And I shared this with them previously, but where we're going to ask them to have our formal position is likely to be neutral, or support with amendments that basically say put the focus in on the section of the bill that directs DLCD, the Department of Land Conservation Division, to create a advisory committee, racial justice or environmental justice, excuse me, advisory committee, and have that be really the kind of the integral part of the department's work to then create a pathway that makes the most sense for addressing climate justice within the state's land use goals. So that's where we're going to be on that one. At least that's my recommendation going to be for IGR to be where we are formally. Do you have a question? What was the other one that you had presented?
Laura, do you have the number for the other EJ bill, and then for the other 2 we're going to be looking at tonight?
I remember. I'm sorry. The other EJ bill was a resolution, a House resolution, and I think we'd be supportive of the House resolution. There's not a major issue there, because it's not going to be a binding statute that then creates a law that we have to implement. So I think we'll be supportive of that one.
And then can you speak to the 2 we're going to be looking at tonight, the producer responsibility bill and the 100% renewable bill?
Sure. The producer responsibility bill, I think it's also I don't know if it's the producer responsibility bill. I saw what was in your packet, and I sent an email out to everyone earlier with information related to how those bills are getting packaged up for the DEQ's, what is it, the modernization of the recycling system. So, but if there's a specific bill, I could take a look at it right now to figure out what our role is going to be, but I would say on some of those ones, where it is. On some of these, it's not going to necessarily be a priority one. We'll support it. And so I would work with staff within the solid waste and recycling program, Michael Wist as the program manager, to have him work with likely Association of Oregon Recyclers, League of Oregon Cities. I know that Metro is taking a more proactive stance on lobbying those bills. And so we would work with those associations and then have Michael provide testimony or support if that's where he feels or it aligns with existing support. We did provide a letter testimony in support of the Senate Bill 570, the product stewardship for mattresses. We are supporting the SB 582, the updating the state recycling system. So, you know, that's where we will be. On the 100% renewables, I don't know where we're going to be on that. I'll probably talk with Janine a little bit and her colleague, Jason Huser from eWeb, to understand what the impacts are and do some level of analysis. I would more than likely not have that as one of our priorities, just to be honest with you, not as a priority one, but potentially a lower priority, and have other staff, likely Chelsea, to provide testimony or support. And once again, we would likely ask to find out where League of Oregon Cities and other associations are that might be, or coalitions that might be working the bill, and provide our you know, like a logo or something like that.
Karen?
You're on mute, Karen.
Thanks for all your hard work, Ethan. Your sustainability is linked to every part, all those different things. So much appreciated. That's a lot of work. The Senate bills are kind of confusing because I was the one that sent the bill in for us to advocate for, but since then it's changed numbers, and it's also come with a bunch of different amendments. So it's basically that modernizing the recycling system, and you know, I'm staying on top of it, and I read all the amendments and everything else, and it's going to be a long process, but it sounds like we're endorsing it, right? That city is already endorsing that. So thank you.
Yeah, that one you know, the prognosis of that one making it through the session fully, I don't know. It's a big bill. It's got a lot of moving pieces. It might take a couple sessions for it to fully get implemented. We're working a lot with Metro on it, because Metro is carrying the heavy labor on the negotiations and the amendments and everything else. And so we're taking kind of a cue from their lead, but we're supportive of it.
You know, on another matter, isn't there going to be another polystyrene ban, statewide polystyrene ban on the docket?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It could be.
I heard from Environment Oregon that they were going to put it back on the ballot again. So anyway, thank you.
Yep. Louisa.
Hey, Ethan, thanks so much. I was wondering about the hydrogen property tax bill. And are all these bills that are priority one, are they all ones you're watching, or is this a list of bills that the city is already committed to?
Well, there's thank you for the question. And so there's two questions. There's the hydrogen bill, and then the other one is kind of the list. The list is just the initial list, and I'm working with staff internally, and then also gathering information and trying to figure out what our position is going to be. And so successive emails to council. So Councilor Semple, she'll get these on a weekly basis and can choose to share them with you if she wants to. And they will have, start to have our positions lined on out about them, related to support, oppose, why we say that, what's it linked to, and the rationale, either adopted city policy or the documents that I showed you in regards to our policy statements. So that we're still working through that, and I just want to be mindful of it because it's some of them. The term I'm using pretty regularly is sticky wicket. There's a lot of sticky wickets. We've got a lot of shareholders, stakeholders involved, and my job is to really make sure that we land the city in a place where most people feel safe, and that we're keeping everybody kind of in a good position and not taking stuff out of context or anything. So I do that with a lot of, intention in that effort. On the hydrogen bill, it's an interesting one. Our local legislator, Senator Beyer, is supportive of it. There's really only one renewable hydrogen project in the state. It's in Eugene, or it would be with EWEB and Northwest Natural Gas. And so I'm kind of concerned that and it's not a permissive bill, it's a shall. Like if the state adopts it, then local communities would have to give up their, provide a property tax exemption. And while the merits of that are great, my major concern is local control, and that those property tax exemptions should come from the city council rather than from the state legislature. And so if the legislature wants to authorize it, then the city council should be the ones to make the determination as to whether or not they're going to use that statutory provision. And in this case, I'm really concerned because if it's an EWEB project and EWEB owns it, then it's tax exempt anyway, right? But if it's a Northwest Natural Gas or it's a collaboration and there's a majority ownership that's a private entity, then why would we want the state to mandate a private entity to receive a tax exemption without having some local discussion about what the potential revenue is and how they would want to incentivize activity. And then the last part is that who knows, like if it's a property tax exemption and EWEB enters into this partnership, but for some reason the project does not work on out and EWEB removes themselves from that partnership, then it's a wholly owned, privately owned, and there's been a property tax exemption that's been provided. I don't think that these renewable hydrogen facilities or the gassing stations or anything else are that are insignificant, in regards to the revenue that would come to the city that would go into the general fund. And so that's where we are right now. We're just kind of trying to figure out what's next.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Other questions?
Ethan, what is the city engaged in the Governor Brown's executive order on climate? Is the city engaging in that executive order rulemaking in any way?
Well, Kate gives me a call pretty regularly. Just kidding. We need, as a city of Eugene, you would think that I've got like carte blanche access to other government officials. Yet we tend to have to put our foot in the door as it's being slowly closed forcefully. So we're constantly trying to get engaged with the state in a much more productive kind of partnership co-governance approach. And on Executive Order 20-04, the governor's climate change, she has directed a number of state agencies, including the Oregon Department of Energy, which, the former Sustainability Liaison Counselor Zelenka is the department deputy director. And there's directives from the governor as to how these departments will be making work plans. And so the process was last spring, most of them had deadlines to put together a plan to then submit to the governor that says, here's how we propose to address the items that you've brought on up. And those were then made available for public comment. Then there was also a lot of them had to then come up with work plans that then that had deadlines by the fall, late fall, early winter, to submit to the governor. And those were also available for public comment. And then those are now in the process of getting implemented. In regards to the Public Utility Commission's work plan and their whole process, I did submit testimony on behalf of the city of Eugene that shared with them some of the learning we have experienced related to input from our equity panel on the CAP 2.0 and trying to make it more available, the regulatory filings and process that happen at the PUC that have got major impacts to kind of utility affordability and impacts of utility systems. Including mostly from investor-owned utilities, which in our area is Northwest Natural Gas, to make sure that they were taking into account access to those filings and those proceedings, and that a lot of times it's a lot of attorneys and highly specialized economists that are only able to engage, and that doesn't necessarily ring true, or that doesn't make it easy from an environmental justice or racial equity standpoint to get more people involved. We also asked them to take a more proactive stance on addressing our community's requests for infrastructure restrictions, and having the PUC look at that from a systematic standpoint rather than a municipal onesie-twosie process might be more advantageous for the state related to their greenhouse gas goals. So that Chelsea might be able to speak related to her involvement with some of the DEQ and I think the DLCD rulemaking. So we're tracking those. So there's a lot going on there, and we're trying to play whack-a-mole on a bunch of these proceedings, and so that we don't lose track of them. But we're also just a limited resource folks juggling a lot. So hopefully that answers the question.
I mean, just as a follow-up, Chelsea, were you able to comment on the thing that he mentioned? I guess if you could just say, what do you mean by a proactive stance on infrastructure restrictions? And then Karen, you'll be up next.
Are you to me, Zach? The
proactive stance on infrastructure restrictions. Can you just explain what you mean by that? And then you said Chelsea might be able to comment on the DEQ process.
Yeah, well, and I'll leave that to Chelsea if she wants to, or if she can follow up later. What I'm talking about is that the PUC as the investor-owned utility regulator and their role may be more appropriate or maybe efficient for in working with utilities to understand the impacts of infrastructure expansion on something that has got heavy carbon CO2 emissions related to the expansion of the infrastructure. So, and what that means is that I know many of you have heard community members come and give you testimony. City Council hears it on a regular basis related to the no new fossil fuel infrastructure and the expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure. And so the question becomes, does the city have the authority? Well, that's still a question to be answered. We believe that we probably do have the authority. We would assert that right if council directed us to as staff. But does that mean that it's the most efficient way for a system, rather than one municipality, but a system to start addressing the concerns that community members and more people are bringing up related to the future of the natural gas system and stranded asset question, and also just carbon emissions overall. And so that's why we in our testimony, we asked the commission to be considering those things so that then they carry the water. Eugene, Portland, maybe one other Bend community would have the staff ability to track some of these, but many communities across the state don't have those resources. And so it leaves them not able to engage in a level that Eugene, Portland, and Bend might be able to. So that's, I think, the reason why we brought it on up.
Okay. Not seeing Chelsea jumping forward. Karen, do you have a question?
I'm happy to jump in if you want me to, Zach.
If you could comment on that, that would be great.
Yeah, so there's a number of rulemaking processes happening at the state level related to the executive order. I'm tracking the It's a mouthful, so I always have to look it up. The Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities Rulemaking Process. I'm an alternate representative for the city on that. That is the DLCD rulemaking process, and it's really, it's doing a number of things, but it's focused in on some rules around transportation planning. So Rob Innerfeld is our lead on that RAC. Also of note, Amy from the EJ Environmental Justice Coordinator from the NAACP is also on that RAC, which is awesome to kind of be in partnership with her and think about what's works for Lane County. And then the other one I'm following is the DEQ GHG Stationary Sources Rulemaking Committee. That one is a couple meetings in. They have 8-hour meetings, so that's particularly hard to track, given that we all have jobs, but working with to coordinate with other local jurisdictions around the state to make sure we're keeping up with that work and providing comment as makes sense.
Thank you. Karen, sorry, you're up.
Thanks for all that total overwhelming amount of information. One of my questions is there anything on the table or discussion about future underground utilities like with electricity? Because that seems to be a big issue here. And I know they're making improvements on the Willamette Street and they're not going to put the utilities underground. So I wonder if there's anything on the table with that for electricity.
Good question, Karen. At the state level, not really sure. There might be some money that comes out of if there's a federal infrastructure package that Congressman DeFazio, Chair DeFazio would be pushing forward. But you know, the undergrounding of utilities is it basically comes down to cost and who pays and who can put the money forward. And so and that's generally the state's not going to jump in there. It's going to be a local issue. And especially here in Eugene, we're very, very fortunate to have a municipal utility, municipal electric utility, water and electric utility. And so they're ahead of the curve on kind of addressing a lot of the public sector issues that versus where like some of the investor-owned utilities are. So, yeah.
Possibility of funding coming our way with potential of the new Green Deal or from the new administration?
Yeah, so there's likely going to be money that's going to come through this $1.9 trillion package, and Eugene will get some of that, but a lot of that's going to go towards, there's a bunch of different buckets of money that'll come, and Eugene will get direct allocation, and that'll go to probably backfill a lot of the lost revenue that we had related to the budget. And so the budget committee's having those hearings. We're looking at the FY22 budget and everything else right now. So that hopefully will fill a gap that created from the pandemic. There's also going to be a lot of other monies that are available to other community partners, rent assistance, homeless services. So we really like that package, and it's likely that the Democrats are going to push it through both the House and the Senate through a party line vote that's associated with the budget reconciliation process. So then after that, we know that there's going to be a Voting Rights Act that's going to be the main focus for the Democrats. And then after that, we hope that the next big thing that they take on is going to be an infrastructure package. And Chairman DeFazio and also Chairman Plone for the House, for the House Energy and Communications or Energy and Commerce Committee. They've already passed a package. They did it last year, so they're going to dust that one off. It's got a lot of money that's going to local communities and support for transit and climate and a lot of good climate policy. That'll then make it on over to the Senate side. It'll get moved around through like 3 different Senate committees rather than just one over on the House side, but luckily like transit is in Senator Wyden's Finance Committee. So funding for that, Senator Merkley sits on the House or the Senate Appropriations Committee, which also has a piece of that, and also the EPW, the Energy and Public Works Committee. And so we've got really good representation within the Senate leadership and from a more progressive caucus that we will see good policy and good investments coming on out. And so hopefully we're going to see more money come into Eugene Springfield related to a lot of these climate related infrastructure investments that we have identified in our CIP, in our transportation system plan, and then also within the CAP.
And also, Jeff Berkeley also took over the Break Free from Plastics legislation. So more stuff. Thank you.
Ethan, you presented to council last week on the franchise agreement negotiations. Can you maybe just give a 1 minute of what was presented and just if there's been any major changes since then?
Sure. So we presented to council the most recent terms and where the two parties were, and I'm sure many of you reviewed that, maybe listened in on the council meeting, and then likely read a lot of the public or the news articles that have come out of that. So, you know, to me, I think that council still wants us at the table to negotiate, but it seemed like the majority of them want us to make sure that we're getting some climate activity or actions incorporated on into any deal that we bring forward. And if that doesn't happen, then they're fine with letting the agreement lapse. And so this Friday was basically our last deadline to have a new franchise agreement ordinance posted for public comment or public review, and then we would work through the timing of that to make sure that there's public hearing and all the statutory requirements related to the notices and everything else for that. And so the 19th was the date, and we haven't put forward anything yet. We likely won't, and so that means that by the May 12th, the existing franchise agreement will lapse. Unless there's some emergency action that council directs staff to do. But that's kind of where it is right now.
Any final questions to close out our presentation here? Seeing none, thank you so much, Ethan. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's good to see you all. Have a good evening. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, Ethan.
Great, everyone. We're a couple minutes early, but we have a short break. So we will see everybody in looks like 8 minutes at 6:30. If everybody could rejoin, we're gonna get into committee proposals. So first up, we have the air quality proposal, and then followed by the CAP funding proposal and the bylaws committee update. So Louisa, can you introduce the air quality proposal and walk us through that?
Sorry, can I jump in really quickly? Louisa, would you like me to share the Word document to share my screen, or would you prefer to share your screen?
I guess that's up to the commissioners. It's in the packet, and I don't know if it's easier to read on folks' own screens or share screen. I'm happy to share mine if it's necessary.
Could one of you share the screen?
Sure.
Can everyone see that?
Okay. So this committee was actually put together in the fall of 2019 to look at air quality, and most of that work was suspended throughout 2020 for obvious reasons. And we reformed the committee in the fall of 2020 to close it out. And our committee interviewed folks from Beyond Toxics as well as LRAPA, and communicated with various city staff as well to put together our background. The buckets that Eugene really struggles with are kind of a few main buckets that revolve around PM 2.5 primarily is the pollutant that we struggle with. Most of PM 2.5, which refers to the diameter of the molecule itself, which is particularly hazardous because of its small size, can go very deep into your lungs and into your bloodstream. Exposure to PM 2.5 causes myriad health impacts, mostly focused on cardiac and lung, but other issues as well. And in Eugene specifically, in our inversion layers, our own pollution sits on top of us, primarily from home wood heating, as well as from transportation and mobile diesel emissions. So in speaking with LRAPA leadership, our DEQ agency for Lane County, emphasized that almost 80% of the winter pollution that we experience in PM 2.5 is from wood stoves. And so we were exploring ways that we could impact that point source of pollution while benefiting other areas of interest to the commission, like the Climate Action Plan, as well as issues of equity. So in specifically looking at reducing the opacity limit, opacity is how much actual visible smoke is coming out of a chimney. Other cities in Lane County, including Oak Ridge, have already reduced their opacity limits to attempt to mitigate their poor air quality. And then we looked at rentals specifically, because there's often a disconnect in maintenance, which is a big issue for polluting from wood stoves. And in a rental unit, there's not a lot of incentive for either party to pay for the maintenance of a stove, which would lead to them being more likely to be unmaintained. And so we wanted to support opportunities for Eugene to gather more data about how many rental units in the city have active used wood heat sources, and also make sure that that's not the only source of heat in a unit. Is an opportunity to collaborate between agencies who have interest in electrifying rental units specifically, like EWEB, to promote a collaborative opportunity there to fund changing wood stoves or providing low-cost electric heat options for those houses. The other recommendations we have revolve around supporting education and access to complaint mechanisms, especially for non-English speakers through LRAPA, who experienced funding cuts in the recession of 2008 that was never restored to its pre-recession levels. which primarily impacted enforcement within the city limits as well as education and opportunities. So the other areas that are more tricky that folks think about with air quality are toxics from large polluters. Just as a background, the Cleaner Air Oregon program is currently auditing 3 large businesses, large emitters in the city, and that process is just getting started. And so there's some opportunity for city staff and for other folks to be more engaged in that process. And the other leverage point that we're hoping for consideration is thinking about the idling of trains at 5th Street, because as so much economic development attention goes there and trains sit and idle, the challenge is that actually the city of Eugene doesn't have much authority to regulate their trains, but there have been some leverage points in communications with the train operators, as in the noise reduction efforts that have been made recently to silence trains in certain parts of the city. So hoping that some of our intergovernmental relations folks might be willing to find points of opportunity to reduce idling of trains in the city that releases massive amounts of diesel particulates over one of our lovelier parts of town. So those are the main points of the project. There are several recommendations. They were gathered from lots of conversations within and outside of the committee, and I'm happy to hear any feedback or questions.
I'm going to have a couple, maybe just small formatting suggestions. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
This is Howard. I have a comment.
I saw Laura raise her hand first, so I'm going to have her go first, Howard, and then you'll be right after her.
I just want to thank Louisa and the group for working on this. It's so well researched and just brings up all these intersectional issues that I think are really important and just amplifies the benefits that we could see with that. So thank you, everybody.
Howard and then Emily.
Yeah, I was on the committee, I guess from the outset, but I had to step off just because of time commitments, but in January. But I have one concern about the one recommendation on assigning a city staff to track Cleaner Air Oregon. My concern is that I don't think the city has any staff that are particularly experienced with air toxics or air quality in general. And since Lane Regional Air Protection Agency, LRAPA, is the agency that's involved in implementing Clean Air Oregon in Lane County, it seems to me that a better way of keeping the council and the community informed is to have our intergovernmental staff request periodic updates from LRAPA on the status of the Cleaner Air Oregon program, rather than assigning staff, which there's limited staff availability. So that would be my suggestion on that. The other concern I have is I'm supportive of reducing opacity from wood burning. That was done in Oak Ridge because Oak Ridge was not in compliance with the National Ambient Air Quality Standard for PM 2.5. And so that required some pretty drastic action, which in Oak Ridge, which is ongoing. Eugene has not violated the standard, although we've had obviously episodes from wildfire and some winter temperature inversions where PM 2.5 has gone up. But as far as complying with the national standard, we haven't been in violation of that. My concern with proposing to reduce the opacity limit is a question of enforcement. LRAPA is pretty strapped with enforcement staff as it is. So I don't think we've had conversation with LRAPA as to what the impact would be if the opacity standard was lowered. The other thing we don't know is whether if we reduce the opacity limit from 40 to 20%, would that make much of an appreciable difference? I'm all for regulation where it makes sense and will have a good effect, but I don't know if it will in this case, and I don't think we've had that conversation with LRAPA. I do think that I would certainly would like to see what we could do, even the city funding more education for people that use wood stoves, either for primary heating or just for more aesthetic purposes like a fireplace or something, because I think there's not a lot of that. I know when I moved here over 8 years ago, I got a little pamphlet from my realtor that from LRAPA, said, if you're going to put a wood stove in or something, it's got to be, EPA certified. But that's been about the extent of any public education. So, I'd like to see, the city try to put some money into that. I think that's perhaps more effective. And in case people don't know, the city does have an ordinance that limits opacity to 40%, but enforcement's on a complaint basis. And the way that the enforcement occurs is LRAPA will receive a complaint and go out and observe. The problem is that those observations for opacity can only be done in daylight hours because it's a visual reading of the opacity of the smoke coming out of a chimney or a stack or something. So enforcement is kind of problematic also. It's difficult. So those are my concerns. I guess one other issue is that from a formatting, I'd like to suggest that that we try to follow the format that we've used for other recommendations to the council. I think this could use a little bit of, some tweaking to follow that format. Thank you.
Lisa, can you speak to any of those points? And then Councillor Sump.
Can I speak to those points? I mean, I'm looking at the PM 2.5 spikes in the city of Eugene for the last 2 weeks. And while Howard is correct that over a 24-hour average, Eugene is not out of compliance, we do experience frequent spikes above safe levels in the city, and it's usually overnight. So when people have their stove going and then dampen it, and it's true, the opacity goes up when you dampen your stove and it's too dark to see. But with the available options that we have, this is the tool that we're given by DEQ. This is the structure that LRAPA has to enforce DEQ rules. And so we do what we can with what we have, which is, and enforcement is usually not handing people tickets because folks who are burning wood are doing so to stay warm. And it's not something I want to prevent, but education and opportunity to partner with, when you do an enforcement call with LRAPA, they can hand out an e-web information about, low cost ductless heat pumps that serves both of the needs of our community in terms of electrification, as well as improving the air quality of the city. So I think that there's more creativity available to our community to take what we've got and make it more effective, like getting more creative. A wood stove changeout program at the state level was an opportunity to get funding, significant rebates to offset the cost of getting a certified wood stove, which is much more clean than older stoves. That was allowed to sunset in 2017. And so there's opportunities for the city of Eugene as well to advocate for relaunching some of those changeout programs. But there's nothing I can say. I mean, Howard's on the board of LRAPA, he knows. It's just, we just have, a slightly different perspective on what's the role of the commission, I think.
Councillor Semple, okay. Councillor Semple?
Thank you. Howard, I appreciate the points you brought up, especially about staff monitoring the reports. I just want to say I really appreciate all the work you did on this. I don't hear much about air quality as I did growing up. Air was even worse everywhere. But my favorite part is you gave us stuff that could be done. You know, you gave us stuff to talk about rather than just going, oh yeah, this is a problem. Now we have to figure out what we could do. So as someone who will be receiving this, I really appreciate the effort to do that. So thank you.
I have a couple thoughts on just formatting. So one would just be to try and group the different problem statements under a single problem header. So the different air permitting sources as an issue. Can you scroll up a second, Samantha? Further, please. So that each of these pollution sources and then the funding issue would basically come underneath a problem statement. If you could scroll back down one page, Samantha, on the right there on the agency funding, enforcement, and communication. Basically, I was going to suggest rewriting that line as lack of funding for enforcement and communication. So it's just one problem rather than three. And then on the next section, if you could go down to recommendation number 2. So 2C, the enforcement in the city of Eugene should include fence line monitoring of known polluters instead of relying upon self-reporting and citizen complaints. I was wondering if that would actually fit better under number 4, the air toxics header. And then last, under 5, this part A here, the relaunching of the wood stove updates rebate program that sunset in 2017. I was wondering if that should actually go under number 1, which is all about wood stoves. So
Can I jump in real quick, Zach? So those are a lot of changes that we could work through right now. I'm wondering if we could go back to the recording, perhaps I could work with Louisa on that, and I can make those changes if the commission decided to approve this with those changes in mind, rather than editing that at this moment. Would you be okay with that? Or
as these are all formatting issues, I'm more than amenable to just voting on the content and allowing formatting changes after.
the other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly from a process standpoint, Howard brought this up related to the formatting, the typical formatting for recommendations. And this is something that I mentioned at the last meeting. You actually don't have a template currently for reports and recommendations out of committees. This is something that's come up in a couple of committees. It did come up with this particular committee. And so if that is something that folks would like to address, I would suggest putting that on the agenda at some point, just like you have proposal templates, for example, for proposing a committee. We've got liaison report templates. We don't actually currently have a recommendations template. So I just wanted to flag that we don't currently have one. But if you would like one, that is something that we could talk about in the future.
Thanks for that, Samantha. Unless there's anything else, I think we can go ahead and vote on the content of the proposal. And Louisa, I think if you want to make some more formatting changes, then that's, as long as it doesn't change the content, that we can accept, that would be acceptable. Is there a motion to approve the proposal? Karen, and a second?
I'd second it.
And Art seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. Did you get that, Samantha? All opposed? And any abstentions? We got one abstention, two abstentions, and Tima and Howard are abstaining. All right, and the measure passes. On to the next one, the funding proposal. Laura, can you lead us off on this one, please?
Sure. So we were the funding committee. We started out as a research committee to look into different funding sources for climate action in Eugene. And we stayed true to that, but then we added one thing because I think it was Art's suggestion of, we're having all this discussion about funding, we should propose something concrete. And funding is always an issue with everything in the city, and particularly with the climate action plan with so many of the items unfunded. So we're recommending to the city to start a fund specifically to do work around the climate action plan. And that's kind of the only proposal in the proposal. And then there's a whole bunch of research. So there's different summaries of different mechanisms that are used in other places. And then just a whole bunch of numbers at the end, which is all information only. So what we want you to vote on tonight is the idea of having this climate action fund.
Questions or comments?
And but anyone from the committee want to add anything before we do questions or comments?
Any additions, Art?
No, I think Laura did a nice job introducing that, and I think it's right. I mean, I think we started out and we tried to find, do some kind of upfront work for the city in terms of investigating some of the mechanisms that we could use, and give a sense of broad range of those, and then just recommend the formation of this fund. I think we can't have an effective and can't hope really for an effective outcome of the CAP if there's not some funding to support many of the actions, and especially options that people in the community we're hoping they will choose. And I think a number of those to make people able to do those things need some incentivizing. So that was the goal of the committee. We're not suggesting how much or which to do. Clearly there's quite a process to go in there to pick some mechanisms and then justify that through sets of activities that would be coming up that would support. So there's work to be done, but we believe the city really should move forward and create such a fund. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, does anyone need me to pull the item up to share my screen?
Any other questions or comments about the proposal? Councillor Semple?
Thank you. Yeah, do it. I agree. We don't have the money to do all this stuff. And especially now with budget and COVID, oh my gosh, if we could put a corner to, at least try to catch whatever we can. And again, you did a lot of research and you put in a lot of different ideas for how we could actually fund it, because that's the problem is how are you going to do it? So I fully support this and I can't wait for it to come to council. Thank you for your work.
Okay, seeing no one else raising their hands, do we have a motion and a second?
I move.
Okay, Louisa and Doug seconding. All in favor, please raise your hand.
You're muted, Zach.
Great. So anyone opposed? None. Anyone abstaining? None. All right, great. And the motion passes. Next up on the list is the bylaws update. If you could pull that up, Samantha, that would be great. I think it'll be fairly quick. So from the time that we spoke about this last month, we actually just made a couple very small changes. So the first is that we changed the shall to should, in saying that commissioners should go to commission sponsored events rather than a shall. We changed.
Zach, can you help us Can you
It's on
direct
the
us to
third
where we are?
page. I think it's on the third page. Further down. Further. Down, down, down. Next page. Here we go. Okay, so on the first part, there's the commission shall financially sponsor at least 2 activities per year. We added budget permitting. So that if we don't have a budget, we don't have to do events. And then the next line is the shall to should, or is encouraged to attend rather than shall. And then if you go further down, Samantha, to the next kind of group of yellow. So we had put in a part about the commission being able to, commissioners can apply for funds by creating a committee and submitting a budget proposal to the full commission, and that would be limited to 50% of the funds. So I think there's just a miscommunication here when it went from the outreach committee proposal to the bylaws update committee that for some reason thought that this was supposed to be part of the original intent, that we could do events and fund them ourselves rather than just funding community events. But that was not the original intent. So we just took it out. And if that's something we want funding for our own events in the future, we'll have to ask for it. But this $5,000 is specifically for sponsoring community events that people bring to us. So those are the 3 changes. Laura?
And I thought, so I'm seeing this, because we talked about, wanting to support accessibility and not just in terms of physical, but also language and that. And then we decided we just didn't have the budget to really offer the full spectrum of accessible needs that people might have. So I thought we took it out, and I see it's crossed out one place, but not the other. So my memory was we decided to, we decided to not require the events to be accessible, but maybe I'm mistaken. And that sign language interpretation is not required to be provided if requested, because that opens up the door to, like, what about Spanish language interpretation and other languages? And so we thought we wouldn't have any of that, but maybe I'm remembering wrong.
Yeah, I thought we agreed that we weren't going to mandate it, or there was some question about we weren't going to mandate it, but it was going to be optional. I was remembering that as well.
It can be really expensive. I wish everything was signed, but it can be prohibitive.
Sorry, we didn't catch this when we met as the committee to fix the mistakes that were caught. Do you have language that you'd suggest in terms of how to change that or to remove it?
I think just remove it, because it's removed once. It's in there twice. So I think we should just remove it completely, because we can't offer everything that we would want to make it accessible.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve as amended?
I move to approve.
Laura makes the motion. Is there a second? Kelsey? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Anyone voting no, please raise your hand. And any abstentions? So 1 abstention and everyone else in favor. Okay, thanks everybody. That is all of our major proposals. Next is resolutions. So first up for resolutions is Karen. Karen, was there a resolution? I didn't see the resolution language, or was it just that we were just going to vote in support of the producer responsibility? Can you speak to what we're voting on as part of this? If Karen is still on, which I'm not seeing her. We will jump, let's jump to the 100% proposal, because it looks like Karen might have dropped off. And then if there's discussion on this one, Tima, if you could run it, that would be great. So essentially the resolution is stating that we want the city council to use its lobbying authority in support of a 100% renewable electricity bill at the state level and in support of a 100% renewable policy at the national level as the Biden administration looks at updating the Clean Power Plan. And then work with EWEB on setting a local target date for 100% renewable energy. So that's what it says. The hope would be to get this to the IGR committee and have them add this to the list of things that the city is lobbying for at the state and national level, and hopefully work with EWEB. And then I'll leave it to everybody to discuss.
Any questions or comments? Okay, Louisa?
Is there a timeline for the goal? Is there a date behind it?
2035.
Okay.
The bill in the legislature and Biden's proposed national rule are both around the year 2035.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone, so does anyone want a motion?
Motion my own. Is there a second?
I see Kelsey. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All opposed? 9. I see no one opposed. Any abstentions? Anyone abstaining? Okay.
Cool. Thank you very much. It passes. All right. Karen, it looked like you dropped off there for a minute. Did you want to talk about the proposal around the producer responsibility bill? Did you want us to vote on a resolution or to
Uh-oh, everybody froze.
or what? Karen, can you hear us? Looks like you're cutting out on us.
Well, that's funny. I thought it was you.
And if you sometimes if you turn off your video and just do audio, that helps it stop from cutting out. Do you want to speak to the producer responsibility bill and what you'd like the commission to do on that? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move us on to commissioner updates, and hopefully we can loop back to this.
Can I ask a quick question about process?
Yeah.
Are we gonna still work through the work plan update?
Geez, I am so sorry. I'm
okay.
Myself again. Samantha, take us away with the work plan, and then we'll go do our updates and close out. Thank you.
Sure. So really quickly, let me pull this up. This was in your work packet. There we go. Thank you for bearing with me while I pull this up. So because it's been a while since we've looked at this and we've got some fresh faces here, I just want to really quickly go over some of this process. So every year the commission has their work plan proposed and adopted and approved by the city council, usually in the fall. And so what you have before you right now that was in your packet is the approved plan that council approved in, October of 2020, I believe, potentially November. And so this is the work plan that you created to guide the work that you do throughout this fiscal year ending in June. And so when we were talking about the agenda and what was to come, we had actually had this on the agenda for the previous meeting in January, because no time like the beginning of the year to check your progress, but had to save it for today. So that's why it's coming to you in February. We have very little structure around this, except that we wanted to bring it in front of everybody so that everyone had eyes on it, and just kind of visually tracking what committees you've already opened, potentially closed, or are working on, and what work is upcoming, as well as leave space for any discussion about your progress so far and what you would like to accomplish in the next few months. So really quickly, we spend a lot of time on this, so I won't go through this line by line, of course, but I just want to highlight some of the bigger items within your work plan. So the very first piece here is community outreach. That was your number one piece on your work plan that you wanted to achieve through your grants, your bylaws, and your community outreach, especially to our marginalized communities here in Eugene. Of course, we just approved your updated bylaws, which makes that more possible. And I know there's work upcoming with the Education and Outreach Committee that will further this piece here. But just something to be thinking about ahead of our next meeting, as you're thinking about what committees you want to form to achieve the work on this work plan. There's definitely work to be done within this space, especially within the Education and Outreach Committee. This could be something to thinking our committee members who are working on this coming up. Is there anyone else that you want on the committee? Is there anyone that else wants to join that committee? Since forming, they did lose a member. So I just wanted to highlight that. Extensive work, of course, has been done around the CAP 2.0 implementation plan. Currently, there is a CAP 2.0 oversight committee that is working on the formation of the CAP 2.0 dashboard. But this is something else to flag. If there's anything else in here, I'm thinking especially neighborhood outreach that folks want to pay attention to. But of course, as you can see, based on what you have approved tonight and recently, you've done quite a bit of work in this particular section. Waste reduction, of course, Waste Reduction Committee wrapped up their work, I believe, last month. But if there's anything else in here that you want to pay attention to. And then I just wanted to highlight, we've done a ton of work around gathering staff to do presentations for you at your commission meetings to provide some context around what the city is doing and how they are meeting their climate recovery goals through their work. And so the areas for further research, we've heard from a lot of staff already about these particular issues, but if you have any other areas that you would like to hear from, we still have a couple of meetings that we can request staff to present. So I just wanted to highlight that and flag that. Another piece, number 5, is city budget. Identify ways to address sustainability through the city's budget. This is a happening time for that. And so I just want to draw to your attention that attending the budget, or I should say viewing the budget committee meetings, attending the budget committee meetings is a helpful way to kind of gauge what the current fiscal process is and where staff are in their work through the upcoming adopted budget. And I believe I'm going to leave it there. At this point, I wanted to open it up for folks. If commissioners have questions around this work plan, possibilities over the next couple of months, or just want to take some time to talk about what is next. I can also give a brief overview if it's helpful about what committees are currently standing and which committees have closed. Yes, Art.
I just had a quick question about the fossil fuel risk bond. Is that presentation next month or April? I can't remember. Laura would know, I'm sure.
Laura, it's next month.
That's what I thought.
Yep. Thank you. I joke because she and I have exchanged emails. For some reason, I cannot get that plus the next staff presentation sorted out. Thank you, Laura. Karen.
Sorry, I was having computer issues. I'm back.
Great.
As far as the Waste Reduction Committee goes, we ended up focusing just on the large events. Waste management, the whole thing with plastics is just kind of evolving with the challenges with the food situation in restaurants right now. And at this moment, we don't have something else on our list. Still
I
have a
accidentally muted you. I meant to unmute myself.
So I don't know if we want to close the committee or leave it open for this moment, but I'm sure I can conjure up other ideas or things to deal with, but the most important thing we accomplished, so.
Okay. Yeah, from a process standpoint, you would go ahead and close that committee because you had put forward a proposal. And so I'm saying this also for other commissioners who are interested in this work. You put a proposal forward for a particular committee that was approved, and that proposal has accomplished its outcome. And so if you had another waste reduction committee with a different focus, you would put forward a new proposal that would be approved by the commission. And that's an important thing to note right now, that we're somehow coming to the end of the fiscal year. And so if you wait too many more meetings to put your proposals forward for folks to approve, you'll have less time to work on it. And so I just want to flag that yeah, as we get closer to June, you'll want to make sure that you have your proposals in ahead of the meeting packets.
And you did say that we could reopen the committee next season or something, right?
Sure, yeah, you probably wouldn't reopen the same committee. You'd probably propose a new committee. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mike.
Does Lisa have anything to say about that?
Oh.
No. What did you say, Karen?
I said unless you or Louisa would have anything else to say on that, but it seems like we accomplished our goal.
Yeah, no, I think that committee did its job, and another one could be formed if we can come up with another target.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, Samantha, you had mentioned that you would review the status of the committees, and I just wanted to put my hand up and said I'd really appreciate if you would do that. You know, what's open, what's closed, and all that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Mike, I just want to publicly acknowledge how much I appreciate you coming in tonight and jumping in. There's a lot of information that's coming at you and you've not received that update yet. And so I just want to flag that I will actually send you documentation with that information. But for tonight's meeting, let me really quickly pull up my notes here, looking at our folders. You are quickly coming upon closing the majority of your committees. And so I will go ahead, if my computer will work with me, I will just note the committees that are open as of tonight. My computer is taking a moment. So if there's anyone, oh, here we go.
I believe it's buildings and energy and the outreach committees are currently open. If there's another one.
Yes. So energy and education and outreach is currently open. The CAP oversight committee is currently open. Energy and buildings is currently open. And I need to go back and double check. My memory is failing me right now. I believe the fossil fuel risk bond committee is closed. I believe, you all approved the recommendations from that. The presentation is forthcoming. So that committee is closed. Okay. So again, that's education and outreach, CAP 2.0 oversight, and energy and buildings. There are 3 open committees at this time.
So the CAP oversight, we're working on the climate dashboard right now, the climate action plan dashboard. We're meeting tomorrow morning. So if you want us to send you the info for that, happy to have you tomorrow morning at, I believe it's 10:30. And then the energy and buildings meeting is next Tuesday afternoon, I believe. And we can send you the information on how to join that if you're interested.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll get that information to you either tomorrow or Friday.
what is the outreach committee doing currently?
I will leave that to Kelsey. I believe she's the chair for that committee.
Yeah, I was going to provide an update more towards the end. So we are working through, we met not yesterday, but the day before, just about coming up with essentially like the grant strategy or like the application strategy for the grant funding, the concept that we had the budget committee give us the $5,000 that we could then be disseminating. So we're working on the kind of like background structure for how that's going to be implemented and how people are going to be applying. So does that ask or answer, Zach, what you're getting at?
Thank you, Kelsey. Are there other questions? Yes, Art.
I just had a comment related to outreach, which is being on the committee, a number of us, or most of us, all of us are getting into some of these issues and really are becoming aware of what they are, what the background is. And I would just say none of us should be shy to submit letters to the editor, to the weekly or the Register Guard to help educate the community. That's one way we can do that, I think. Doesn't necessarily have to be from a commissioner or anything like that, but just sharing the knowledge that we have and informing people about these issues, I think is an opportunity we have that we could take.
And I just want to, actually, that's a great segue, Art, for a point of process. Laura, actually, you might be about to speak to this as someone who did actually submit some editorial. If you do decide to do so, I just wanted to flag, make sure you are welcome to express your opinion commission on behalf of the commission. Laura?
You blinked out a little bit, at least for me. So when I had a letter or an opinion piece in the Register Guard, and I asked Samantha ahead of time just to make sure I had the language right of how to say, like, identify myself as a commissioner, but I'm speaking on I forget exactly what it said, but basically, like, I'm a member of the Sustainability Commission and I'm writing as a resident of Eugene, just to be really clear that I'm not representing the commission in any way. It's just my personal opinion.
All right.
Right, and I noticed that's one way to do it, or just as a citizen, even not even mentioning the Sustainability Commission so much, but we are just able to educate and inform and give some opinions about some directions for the community. And I think we should take the opportunity to do that.
Awesome. Zach, looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, I went through the list earlier today and just kind of flagged some things that maybe we're done with, or things that we're not doing as well on. And then I just had some question marks around a couple of things and how best to maybe move them forward. So just as a starting question, I wanted to ask, are there any priorities that folks have before the end of the year that are either not represented here, or just we haven't gotten them done yet, but there's something that you're really itching to get done before the end of the year in just 4 months? Okay, hearing nothing. I did, I guess, just on a couple of these points. Outreach was one of the areas where I felt like we still are not necessarily getting as far out there or being as inclusive as we would like to be. And so I look forward to the rules getting done so we can finally support some events, and seeing what that continues to develop as we finish the dashboard on the CAP committee. I think that we might try and transition some of our work into supporting community outreach on the CAP and thinking through how we can support staff and in that process. I wanted to ask on presentations that we've been getting as a commission. I've been trying to build in equity into that and in a meaningful way. And I guess I'll just state that I'm hoping that we can continue to get more data from the departments and asking that equity question of is there an equitable distribution of resources for any given topic that we are looking at? So just continuing to make that a priority in the presentations that we're getting. On the budget, we have now passed a recommendation that we fund things and spend money on things. So I'm actually hoping that we can take that funding document and run with it and present that to the budget committee and to the council and basically say that you should fund these things that we've been talking about. On the further research, I basically had some question marks. Can you throw that up again, the further research screen, Samantha? So on B here, governance structure, explore how to bolster work of environmental and racial justice in sustainability efforts throughout the city. I was just wondering if anybody could speak to this and what the hope was in including this in the work plan and what we can do to maybe accomplish that.
Wait, sorry, was this government? Okay. That was something I had brought up a while ago. This was back when I had some conversations with a few people outside of this organization about just like the concept of potentially like a new city department or thinking about how we are really infusing these topics into just essentially the way like city processes and the way that we kind of look at some of that stuff. But so I currently think we have a lot on our plate right now of things that are happening, or at least I certainly feel like I'm probably going to be spending more of my time with the grant component of all of this. So I'm okay with like removing it if people want to remove it, but that was just something I'd thrown out a while ago before we had kind of gained traction on the budgeting piece.
I just want to note, Kelsey, thank you for your comments. I don't think we can actually change your work plan since it's been approved by council, but just in terms of your internal notation.
But you're feeling comfortable with this and where it's at, Kelsey, and that we don't need to spend a lot more time thinking about this than we are right now?
Yeah, no, I think it's, I think kind of, again, I think the seed grant component and how we work towards that in some ways might be tapping into some of what I was suggesting with that original idea, so.
Okay, so similar question on E, resiliency, research how we can localize the supply chain and increase resiliency of the physical landscape and local community. I didn't know if there was something that we're trying to research or accomplish there. Do folks have thoughts on if there's something we should be doing to move this forward and what that would be? Karen?
You're muted, Karen.
Karen, you're muted.
Okay, hi. I've been thinking about this, and I was thinking that one of the things that I'd like to see, at least in the long run, is for us to discuss or introduce this concept of the circular economy and what we could do to make some kind of recommendation to move Eugene more towards the circular economy, and that kind of would address this thing because it would create an economic. It would match the goals of sustainability. So maybe that's something we can kick down the road a little bit, but I'm interested in that.
Can I touch on that really quickly, Zach? So just from a staff perspective, thinking again what your role is with council, which is to be an advisory body, thinking about, a past counselor who specified in discussing your work plan that really the role of the commission is to do the research and to do the legwork that council can't do, and sometimes maybe even staff in the way of research to make recommendations to them. And where I see this particular item, resiliency, it's a topic that local jurisdictions care very deeply about. And it's a hard topic to wrestle with. And so I would say if this is an area of interest for any of the commissioners, this is definitely an area that could use a lot of research for council to consider. I don't know, if this isn't an area of particular interest or expertise, maybe your time is better spent elsewhere, but I just wanted to flag, in terms of the purpose of exploring these topics and your role with council, resiliency is a topic that is very important and is something that, the city cares very deeply about and is working really hard to think about also.
If someone would like to recommend a committee or a presentation in this area, then please do so. On the next piece, affordable housing, explore ways to support development of affordable housing in Eugene, monitoring the expansion of House Bill 2001 and its impact on our community. Folks that wanted us to work on this, any thoughts on what we can or should be doing in the remainder of the year?
I'll chime in really quick. I think there's a few, I think this is going to be picking up steam more later in the year from my understanding. There's a lot of just kind of public outreach stuff happening right now before I think stuff more goes to council. But one thing I just wanted to plug is I know the city just released or is closing a survey at the beginning of March that more specifically digs into some like code requirements. It's really quick, like the survey is like maybe 10 questions. I took it already, but I highly encourage everyone here to take that survey and give feedback about that as part of the public process.
Is that on the city's planning pages?
Yeah, I think it should be. I'll find the link real quick and I can drop it in the chat if people want that.
Thanks.
It's on the Engage Eugene platform, if you're familiar with that platform.
Drew?
Yeah, Zach. So there's another commission that deals with housing, right? There's a homeless or some other commission in the city of Eugene that deals with this issue. Am I wrong about that?
I believe there's a housing policy board that has a number of stakeholders, and maybe Chelsea or Samantha can speak to who's on that.
Okay.
I'm on it. I went to my very first meeting, so I'm probably not the best reporter. And I'm sorry, I have a hard time with late meetings with my concussion. So if I look tired, I am. They're the committee that did the tenants' rights and associate and help. They said that maybe they didn't have anything else to do. So I don't know how much they'll be involved with this. There is the CDGB and the HUD and the home, which it turns out I'm on those too, although the mayor didn't even plan for me to be there. So I'm just new in that position. I'm not very good at reporting about it. And affordable housing, of course, also comes under planning and urban renewal, the old Montgomery LCC building. So I think that a lot of different parts of the city structure are working on that.
So was the question, Zach, to form a subcommittee around affordable housing? This
was under the areas for further research. And so, if this was an item that was a real priority for someone, it's, well, what does that look like? Either, A, maybe suggest a presentation that we can see on the issue, or B, if there's an idea for a committee to actively move this issue forward, that would be an opportunity as well. This is more of a check-in to say, essentially, if you want to put in a committee proposal and work on it before the end of the year, you really have just 1 or 2 months left in order for it to get completed in time for our June final meeting of the year. And so just to state, if there's something you want to get done before the end of the year, this is a time to think about, what does that look like? So that maybe a committee proposal or recommendation for a presentation can get made and we can get that done before the end of the fiscal year at the end of June.
I I think I was the one that listed affordable housing, and I hear you. And at this point, I don't think, at least from my end, that it's going to be a subcommittee. At the time, it was more, I just kind of wanted us as a commission to be prepared that this was a topic that was happening, that if there was, again, like a chance for us to throw our weight behind something, whether it was like a letter of endorsement or something similar that was coming along about any of this. But I haven't seen, at least from my end, any opportunities like that. So that being said, I'm okay with it not being a subcommittee or not necessarily being like an action item right now, but that's just my opinion.
And I want to throw out there as well, this isn't the only opportunity to discuss this. This is why you have a chair and co-chair or vice chair of your commission. So if, this is just sort of, opening the door to ideas based on what's in the work plan, work that's been completed, work that you're interested in doing based on this discussion, I would encourage you to reach out to Zach or Mtima over the next, few weeks or however long and discuss what maybe some of your thoughts are. They are there to provide you guidance and leadership as well. Not to throw you guys out there into the spotlight, but you volunteered for it, so.
On to the next couple questions. I guess the next two would be urban forestry and emergency preparedness. So urban forestry, we had the presentation last month. Emergency preparedness, I'm hoping to have in May. That'll probably be our last presentation potentially of the year. And really, I just wanted to ask, beyond those presentations, is there anything that folks are desiring in this area, in either of those two areas, on urban forestry or emergency preparedness? All right. Seeing nothing, I guess the last two things I just wanted to touch on was C, education about long-term goals of city departments. Again, we've been trying to have some good presentations this year. One of the things I'm hoping to do at the end of the year is to talk about which departments would the commission want to hear from on an annual basis, so it becomes more of a regular thing, and what data sets would you want them to kind of present on an annual basis? So ideally, over a number of years, you could see kind of an annual improvement and be able to support what staff are doing. So hoping to come back to that at the end of the year of just kind of, were these valuable and how could they be made better in the future? And then on D, development of relationship with city council. A few months, there's been an issue in recent years with regards to the process to take things from the commission to the council and have them heard in a good professional way where we can present our recommendations and council can ask questions that we can respond to in real time. And so back in November, I asked the mayor if there was a way where when we make recommendations, we could actually have some time in front of the city council during a work session to present those recommendations and answer questions. When we passed our waste management for large events proposal back in January, I sent an email to the full council asking that we would be able to present that proposal and also letting them know that we were going to have 2 more proposals likely this month for them to take a look at. And so I followed up more recently with the mayor and currently she said that they are going to talk, the council is going to have a retreat on the 27th and essentially discuss the process for having commissions come and present at council. And so the hope is that out of that, we will, my hope is that it will be set up where there will be in the future a mid-year check-in and an end of the year check-in for the commission, where at the middle of the year, we would have a chance to present the reports that we have completed up till that point. And then at the end of the year, we could present any final reports or any final recommendations, as well as an end of the year annual report. We would finish our report at the last meeting saying this is all the things we did, wrap up any final reports, and then we would get to present that to council at the end of the work year. So, so once we take tonight's proposals and put those into Sustainability Commission letterhead, I will be sending those proposals to the full council. And again, asking for a chance for the commission to present those at council and have an opportunity to answer questions. And they will discuss that on the 27th and hopefully schedule us sometime. Looks like April will be the earliest that we can actually go present these now, because there's going to be a council break in the end of March. So hopefully in April we can go and present to council. If any of you happens to have your counselor's ear, most of the counselors I've spoken to about this are supportive of having us come present, but if you can kind of poke whatever counselor appointed you to be in support, that would be amazing as well. Art.
Yeah, no, I just want to thank you for pushing this issue, Zach. I think this can be an important improvement in that relationship, and hopefully something can be worked out. I appreciate that. And also, if we can find out from, maybe Samantha can alert us to when our proposals from this month would be being sent to council, so we can all jump in and maybe at least make a presentation at the upcoming meeting, the first meeting after that, so we can comment and reinforce those submissions.
So the process for that actually is that I will. Can you hear me now?
You're cutting out, Art, but just to say that I can CC the commission when I email council with the proposals, if that's desired.
And I was actually telling Art as well that typically what I'll do after the commission meeting is take the item that was sent, I'll put it on letterhead and actually send it back to the committee so that they have that document finalized on letterhead. And then we don't have that process formalized right now, as Zach was mentioning. And so what has been done before is that the committee chair would send out, or Zach, let's say, would send out the recommendations. How you all want to do that with these particular proposals will be between the chairs of those committees, as well as Zach and Tima, your leadership moving forward.
Could you let us know when the next public comment period would be at the council after they receive those, so one could attend and support what you've sent in?
Sure, I'll work with the committee chairs and commission leadership to see when those go out specifically, and I can follow up with the commission with an email letting you know when the next following public comment period will be.
Thank you.
Anything up as we on our work plan? Okay, seeing none. Karen, you were cutting out on us before. Did you have a proposal for us to vote on with regards to supporting the producer responsibility? Did we still need to now that council's already in support, or what were you wanting us to do on it?
I think that I wanted everybody to be aware. That was the first thing. And then second of all, I'm satisfied, so I don't feel like we need to push it any further. It sounds like Ethan's on it and he knows the bills, he's watching them, and it sounds like there's support. So I'm staying on top of it and trying to attend the DEQ hearings on it, etc. And just I think it would be a fantastic thing, because Oregon would be the first state that in the United States that has this really amazing extended producer responsibility thing. So once again, being a pioneer, just like with the bottle bill, Oregon had the first bottle bill as well. So thank you very much for honoring that and bringing it to the commission. And it's just really sweet that Ethan's already on it and they already support it. So we can move on to other important things. And thanks everybody for all your hard work on all those other proposals as well. And I got rid of my wood stove last year, so I especially appreciate that one. So thanks.
Okay. To round us out, we've got staff and commissioner and council updates. Any staff updates?
Thank you. So I just wanted to bring to your attention, again, somehow the end of the fiscal year is coming up, which for this particular year also means the end of some of our commissioners' appointments. And so some of you who have appointment terms ending, you'll be hearing from me soon about what your reappointment process will look like. I'll send out an email about that soon. So just wanted to flag that things are a little different this year from how you probably did it before. So I just wanted to let you know that that is forthcoming, and they're trying to complete that in early March. So I'll be sending that out to you shortly.
Any commissioner updates?
Yeah, I'll jump in really quick. I kind of mentioned, we talked a little bit about the education subcommittee that we've been working on, and it is myself and Laura and Louisa, and we met earlier this week. And pretty much I just want to prime the pump for, we will be coming back at our next meeting with some documentation, hopefully for you all to vote on. The year has very much snuck up on us. So we have the $5,000 that we can essentially distribute, and we are coming up then on the end of the budgeting year already in June, which is wild. So we are just letting you all know that it will feel kind of fast and quick, and that is because we kind of have to be fast and quick. So we hope to be coming to the next meeting with kind of hopefully an overview or a skeleton of what we are going to propose as like the form or like the metrics, and how we're going to look at people being able to submit to ask for grant funding essentially. So I just wanted to put that out there, that please keep in mind that that will be coming, and we will be needing to be pretty expedient on that. However, I say that with the qualification that this is the first year we're doing it, so it is going to be a little bit naturally of a trial by fire process. So this version of it will have to be pretty quick, but we're hoping again to kind of tease this out as we go. And if it's not perfect this time, we will certainly be hopefully iterating on this if we get another round of budget funding. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But and Laura and Louisa, if you have anything you want to jump in with on that, I'll open it up to you.
Chelsea?
After y'all.
Chelsea, did you have a comment, and then Laura?
Yeah, I just wanted to say there feels like there's some uncertainty around the like the $5,000 itself, in terms of, well, what's certain is there's $5,000 in our account for sure, and in terms of like that's not going to get scooped. So there's not urgency on my end. I can protect that money for you all through the end of the fiscal year. If there's uncertainty in terms of whether there'll be another 5,000 next year, because the budget process and everything is so tight this year, I don't know that there'll be additional funds. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clear. And if you all want to advocate that there should be another $5,000, like, you need to advocate, and we can talk about what that could look like. But I just wanted to make sure you're aware that I don't know that there'll be another $5,000 next fiscal year. Does that make sense?
It does. I think the concern was that, like, for example, right now, if we do not distribute the $5,000 funds by June, or July, does that just disappear?
No, I'll protect it. It's fine.
Okay, that helps and takes some of the stress off then. Okay.
I'll guard it for you all. Don't worry.
Okay, but yeah, I think there could be the potential. I certainly am interested in talking long-term about advocating and what that looks like, but I know Laura was going to jump in, so I'll let you take over.
Yeah, I definitely want to find out how we can advocate to continue this. And I think it'll be a great way for us to connect with the community more like we've wanted to. I also wanted to tell you all that we're planning to model it pretty much exactly how the Human Rights Commission is doing it. And just so we're not going to be bringing you something that is like kind of coming from somewhere else, like we're just going to model it off the existing commission that has this, which everything we've done has been modeled off of them. And then we do want to adapt it as we see fit and as needed next year if we get funding again.
Louisa? Louisa, did you have your hand raised?
Oh, was that me?
Yeah.
I'm going to turn off my camera. My internet is unstable. So I just wanted to provide a quick update on some of the topics that we were just talking about that are of interest to the commission, like resiliency and emergency planning. If you're interested in how a neighborhood by neighborhood is taking these issues on, I've been working on the River Road Santa Clara neighborhood plan for almost 4 years now. And that is coming towards an adoption package phase. So the group is neighbors collaborating with city staff to develop a neighborhood plan for River Road and Santa Clara, which is 35,000 people, almost a fifth of the city, and also across city and county. And so we've been having to navigate a lot of challenges of how people see the neighborhood, see the role of the community, but there's a lot of good creativity around the engagement with our neighborhood associations, schools, churches, partnering for rest stops for unhoused community members, and as well as a lot of the resiliency questions. Can we reduce SDCs for homes that put in, creative or developments that put in renewable energy or water reduction or gray water, things like that. So the plan in all of its forms and iterations is up on the website for the city, and we'll be taking the next steps of that to Planning Commission this month and going towards council in the next couple months. So there's kind of a mini city in action plan happening in parallel to the city. And so I'd welcome any questions or offline conversations about folks if you're interested in how that process is happening or what it means for River Road Santa Clara.
Thanks, Louisa. I have one other update, which is just that Samantha mentioned the budget process. The first meeting of that is tomorrow night. So I'll be attending that. And I just would encourage anyone else who is interested in supporting climate in the budget to potentially attend those meetings. There's the budget committee website, and all of the dates are on there. The first one's tomorrow night, I believe at the same time, around 5:30 p.m. Seeing no other commissioners, Councillor Semple, any short updates before we end for the night?
Sure. As far as the $5,000, thank you for protecting that, Chelsea. I was on the Human Rights Commission, and it's really easy. And it feels really good to support people. The budget, the council decides budget by the end of June, but the budget committee wraps up by the end of May. So you really only have the March and the April and squeaking in the May meeting before budget committee has their vote. So really get on it before next month's meeting so we can get it finalized. Tomorrow night is the first budget meeting, and then we don't meet again until the April when the budget gets presented. But tomorrow, capital improvement program. And a few years ago, we asked that they include the carbon reduction figures, and we have a summary of it, and then they go through each of the departments and say what they're doing or could be doing or can't be doing. So it's pretty interesting, and there's actually quite a bit of it is about carbon. So you might want to listen tomorrow night, and then budget won't happen again for a while. And budget meetings usually have not all of them, but at least the last two have a public comment part, and that can be influential. So don't forget about that. Let's see, and then there'll be a public hearing on this on March 8th. So if you come to the meeting or look this over or have something to say, that's a really good chance to do it. And you get 3 minutes at a public hearing, unlike 2.5 at a forum. So it can be verbose. Yesterday, we had a presentation about the census and ward redistribution, and the census is so far behind that we may not get the figures till September or later. So that's going to be an interesting subject, since you have candidates starting and the wards haven't been finalized. And we also appointed Leah Pitcher as interim police auditor because Mark Gissner is ending on February 22nd, I think. And then before that, we also had the urban forestry good news and the Northwest Natural discussion, which you've heard a lot about tonight. And I don't have anything new to add on it. The managers and instead of the negotiators, we now have higher level management on both sides trying to work on this. But Sarah said we had to have something finalized by this Friday, and we obviously don't. So there will be a time without an agreement. And, you know, there's still time for input, because we're hearing, oh, there was an input, even though we've all been talking about this for quite a while. And a wider, broad, more people from different opinions are weighing in. So don't relax. I think that's about it. There's nothing. Oh, clear and objective standards, which is about housing. You might be interested in that. It's also March 8th. So good work. I really appreciate you. And I totally understand the frustration with not getting all this work in front of council. I feel like I've let the ball drop a little bit. It's been a tough year. So, but I agree. We need to do better communication, because council, it's different when you come to forum and say you're 2.5 minutes. I think you get 3 if you're representing the commission. And then we get an email, and depending on what's hot, that emails can get really varied. And even if, you know, I talk about it in a quick items in my reports, it's not really getting to council, and that's frustrating for you and frustrating for me, because I come to all these meetings too. And that's been a worry of mine since I started. They have me come to, I might have talked to some of you, the new commission meetings, where they tell you how to do it and all the exciting work you're going to do. And then I come out and say, forget it, we're not going to listen to you. And then what can we do to fix that? So your frustration is real, and we need to change it. And I will try harder. Thank you for your work, so that can be a problem.
Thank you, everyone. If there's anything else, any final comments, we can have those now, but a lot of work got done tonight. So just thanks everyone for your time, and I'll see you next month.